He spent 6 months secretly choosing another woman over me. So, I spent one cold, quiet afternoon systematically deleting 14 years of his entire life. I was working grueling 6-day weeks as a meteorologist. Literally paying his rent and funding his lifestyle while he sat on his ass. And the second I hit a rough patch and asked him to step up, this toxic leech went out, found a new girl, and started feeding her my deepest personal secrets just to make her laugh, but I didn't scream, and I didn't cry. While he was blissfully asleep on a flight back home, I used his old login credentials to hijack the one thing he loved more than anything, his 14-year-old gaming empire. I liquidated his entire multi-billion coin fortune, wiped out his social circle, and replaced his life's work with something incredibly insulting, and right before I logged out, I made one permanent, irreversible modification to his character that permanently ruined over a decade of discipline. You genuinely need to stay until the very end to see the absolute meltdown that was waiting for him when his plane landed. His phone was face up on the nightstand. He was in the shower. The water was still running. And there it was, a message notification, glowing right there in the open, from a name I had never seen before. The preview showed just enough. When are you gonna leave here? All those extra R's. Casual. Like she had asked him this 100 times already. Like the answer was something they both already knew. I did not move. I did not make a sound. I stood in the middle of my own bedroom, in a relationship I had spent years pouring myself into, and felt something go completely cold inside my chest. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to where this all started. This story, as originally shared online, is told entirely from one person's perspective. We met through an online RPG, one of those massive, endlessly complex games where you build a single character over years and it starts to feel like something genuinely yours. We were young when we connected, both grinding away at the same game. And what started as two players talking in a chat window turned into something neither of us planned. Long distance. About 1,500 miles between us. But real. As real as anything I had felt in my life, and honestly, in those early years, Marcus, I will call him that, was everything I needed him to be. Quiet, funny. The kind of person who remembered every small thing you said weeks after you said it. He made me feel like I was the most important person in any room, even when the room was just a phone screen. We had plans. Real ones. A date set for me to finally move in with him. Here is the thing, though. I was the one holding everything together. My job as an industrial meteorologist kept me working long hours, 6 days a week. Marcus had a harder time staying employed consistently, so I stepped in. I covered his rent when he moved out on his own. I sent money regularly. I bought him things without being asked. I am not telling you that to sound like a martyr. I am telling you because it matters enormously for what comes later. The first real crack showed up when I hit a rough month. Car repairs, back bills, my own expenses stacking up, and I had to tell him I could not cover his rent that 1 month. 1 month. And he came apart in a way that I was not prepared for. Crying. Panicking. He turned down every job option I found for him, including a warehouse position that paid well and asked almost nothing of him. Then he had the nerve to tell me I should just work harder. Maybe pick up a second job. I want you to really picture that. I was already working 6 days a week in a demanding field, and the man I had been financially supporting for years told me I needed to do more. I cried alone for a couple of hours that night after we hung up. I almost ended it right there. Something kept me from doing it, some version of myself that was still making excuses for him that he had never once asked me to make. That is the part one I'm least proud of, looking back. Not what I did later. That, eventually he picked up a retail job, things leveled out, and I convinced myself we were okay again. He flew out to stay with me for a few days, the first visit in months. The first 2 days were genuinely good. He took me on real dates for once. I remember sitting across from him at dinner and thinking maybe I had overread everything. Maybe we were going to be fine. I was in the other room when he went to shower. He left his phone on the nightstand. I was not looking for anything. I walked past and the screen lit up on its own, an incoming message, preview visible, from a name I did not recognize. 7 words and a trail of R's from a woman I had never heard of. That was all it took. When he came out of the bathroom, I gave him a completely normal smile. I asked him how the water pressure was. I made small talk about nothing for the rest of the evening and watched him settle in, fully relaxed. With absolutely no idea that something had just shifted permanently between us. That night I lay next to him and stared at the ceiling. I did not sleep. Not for a long time, and quietly, in the dark, I made myself a promise. He fell asleep fast. He always did, the deep, effortless sleep of someone with nothing weighing on them. I waited until his breathing leveled out. Then I reached for his phone. What I found over the next 2 hours was worse than anything I had let myself imagine. He had been seeing someone else for nearly 6 months. 6 months. And the timing, I want you to really sit with this, lined up almost exactly with the month I had told him I could not cover his rent. The month he had cried on the phone about being scared. He had gone looking for someone new within weeks of that call and never said a single word to me about it. That was not the part that hollowed me out the most. The part that hollowed me out was what he said about me in those messages. He had described me to her in ways that made me feel like a stranger in my own relationship. He had taken things I trusted him with, deeply personal things I had shared willingly because I believed we were genuinely safe, and he handed them to her without hesitation. Let her weigh in on someone who had been paying his bills, building his future, and choosing him every single day. I set the phone down and sat completely still for a long time, not crying, not falling apart. Just rebuilding something internally that was going to need to be made of different material than what I had been using before. Hey, before we go any further, if this story is landing the way I think it is, a subscribe genuinely means everything on a channel this size. Okay, back to it, because it gets a lot colder from here. The next morning, I woke up to find him at my computer, playing the game, eating my food, completely at home. Looking at him felt like looking at a stranger, all the familiarity wiped overnight, just some guy sitting in my house using my things while I stood in the doorway holding a coffee mug, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. I drove him to the airport a few hours later. We said goodbye at the curb. Quiet. A little somber, even. He pulled me in for a hug. I let him. He did not know it was the last one. I did that. I sat in my car in the parking structure for a long time after he disappeared through the doors. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I just sat there and let everything settle into something I could actually carry. Slowly, the grief moved aside. Not into rage. Rage is loud and loud is sloppy. It moved into something much quieter and much more exact. I drove home. I will be honest, somewhere in those first few hours, I almost let the whole thing go. I started typing out a simple message to end things. Clean, direct, no explanation necessary. I almost sent it. And then I thought about those 6 months. I thought about every conversation where he had painted himself as someone struggling, overwhelmed, doing his best, while he was living a second life behind my back. I thought about what he had taken from me, without asking, and handed to someone else without hesitation. I closed the draft. I opened the game instead. The online RPG we had both grown up playing had a shared account, something we had built together as a kind of joint project over the years. If we ever split up, we had always joked, we would each take our half. I logged in. I took my half. Then I took his half and distributed every single item to strangers across the game, one by one, until the shared account was completely empty. I sat back and stared at the screen. Then I remembered something years ago. Marcus had given me the login credentials to his personal account, the one he had been building for over 14 years, so I could help him train a specific skill when he was busy. I had written them down in my desk drawer. I pulled it open slowly. They were still there, and I want you to really picture this moment. Because what came next was not made in anger. It was made in the clearest, coldest, most deliberate state of mind I have ever been in. I typed in the username. I typed in the password. His account opened right up. His in-game bank was 14 years of work made visible. Gear, resources, rare items accumulated hour by hour across over a decade of playing. The kind of wealth that serious players spend years chasing. I started selling it. All of it, every item moved through the in-game marketplace and converted into coins. It took a long time. He was still in the air flying home, so I had hours. By the time I was done, I had just over 8.5 billion in-game coins sitting in his account. His entire fortune. Everything he had ever earned across 14 years of that game, liquid and in my hands. Now stay with me here, because this is where it gets interesting. Can I be completely real with you for a second? I spent almost 15 hours researching, script writing, and editing this exact video in my bedroom, watching the subscriber count sit at exactly 12. It's hard starting from zero, but if you can see the effort and the passion in this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Your one click tells me that these sleepless nights are actually worth it. Now, let's get back to the flight landing. I thought carefully about what to spend it on. I wanted it to be right. I reached out to someone I knew in the game, a collector, someone I had teased for years about hoarding the most completely useless items imaginable. Burnt food. For anyone who has never played an online RPG like this one, burnt food in this game has no function whatsoever. You cannot use it. You cannot sell it through the marketplace. You cannot do anything meaningful with it. It exists purely as a mistake, something that went wrong during cooking and can never be corrected. My friend had 6,000 pieces of a specific burnt item sitting in his collection that he had been accumulating for years. I paid him an enormous amount of Marcus's coins for every single one. I placed all 6,000 pieces carefully into Marcus's bank. He was going to log into his 14-year account and find a bank full of cooking mistakes. I still had billions left. So I treated myself. I bought myself nearly 4 years of in-game membership, paid for entirely with Marcus's coins. I bought high-level gear and equipment I had been slowly working toward, all transferred directly to my account. I bought crafting supplies for expensive skills I had been building. By the end of the afternoon, I had upgraded my own account significantly and reduced Marcus's fortune to almost nothing. The last remaining coins, a small pile at the bottom, I gave away to a random player I found standing near the marketplace. A complete stranger walked away extremely happy that afternoon, with no idea where the windfall came from. Marcus's bank now contained 6,000 pieces of burnt food. And one pile of bones I picked up off the ground nearby and placed inside, just to finish the picture. And get this, I was not done. This is the part one still think about most. Marcus had what serious players call a pure build, meaning he had spent 14 years specifically keeping one particular defensive skill at the absolute minimum level, on purpose. It is a strategic account type that defines your entire character and takes years of careful discipline to maintain, because the moment you level that skill even once, the build changes permanently. There is no going back. No reversal. No recovery. You cannot undo it. I leveled at 0.1 click. The defensive skill ticked up 1 level. 14 years of deliberate, careful account management, gone. His character would never be the build he had constructed it to be again. I felt the cold click of something locking into place and did not move for a moment. Then I went to his in-game house. Building a quality house in this game is one of the most expensive, time-consuming achievements possible. Marcus had one of the finest I had ever seen, something that must have cost several billion coins to construct and furnish over years of work. I disassembled it room by room. Every decoration, every piece of furniture, every structure he had spent years building. All of it gone with no recovery option, no rollback, no insurance. If he wants a house again, he will need to rebuild from nothing using money he no longer has. I scrolled through his friends list and, as him, sent honest messages to every contact who was currently online. I told them exactly what he had done. I told them who he actually was. The ones who did not remove themselves, I removed them. His entire in-game social circle, gone, and last, I changed his username. The game allows 1 name change per month. I used every character the limit allowed to make sure that anyone who encountered his account would understand immediately what kind of person was attached to it. He would not be able to reclaim his original name for weeks. And if he waited too long, I would claim it first and park it on a throwaway account forever. His messages came that night. Furious at first. Then longer, more desperate. Then pictures of him crying, sent one after another like I was supposed to feel something. I wrote him back once. Calmly. I ended the relationship clearly. In writing, and I noted, without specifics, that what he had done with my personal trust carried potential legal consequences. And that if he chose to continue contacting me, I would need to explore those options formally. I had no intention of following through on any of that. I simply needed him to understand that this chapter was over. He stopped. I still think about the moment I sat down at that computer. Not with triumph, it did not feel like triumph. It felt like something much quieter than that. Like finally setting down a weight I had been carrying for so long I had forgotten. It was not supposed to be mine. He spent 6 months choosing her over me. I spent 1 afternoon choosing myself. Some investments just have better returns.